Alright, welcome back to video 2 on database and file concepts. In the last video we covered why we use databases, and the databases are pretty much just a collection of tables that have some kind of relationship and some kind of connection between them, and we saw that last time that this lesson, database and file concepts, will be connected to this class by this ID here. That's how we'll know that these two pieces of data are connected. And so in this lesson, we're going to talk about these types of connections. There's three main types of connections that we'll be discussing. There's a one-to-one, one-to-many, and a many-to-many. Okay, so let's talk about the one-to-one first. This is not a very obvious one. It's actually a bit of a strange one to think about. So here's an example of when we might use a one-to-one. We might have like employee details. So employee ID, let's say. So first name, last name. I'm going to make it short. I'll just say number. This is not how you would set up a good database, by the way, just in case you're wondering. But I'm just showing you an example. All right, so you might have that. Okay, and so let's just put in some data. We got one, and his name is Dave. His last name is Davidson. And his number is 07234567889. Alright, and yes, I need to format this to be a number, I know, but let's just not get too distracted by things. Alright, so here's a table. This would have a lot of rows in it, obviously. Oh, I'm going to drive myself batty with that. Alright, okay, so now you might have another table, like a table that has accounts information. So it might have an account ID. I'm going to add another user just to make this so we don't get and oops, Sue comes from a different country, whatever. And then I want to swap them around just so we don't get confused. Or I'm just going to start with a different number. I'm starting at 34, count 34 and 35. Okay, and now so these account ID and let's say account number, which might be 123, 123, and 124532, whatever. These are your account numbers. Okay, so who do these accounts belong to? Well, in this case, we might need an employee ID. Okay, and then so let's say this is Dave's account. We would link him here, and that's Sue's account, so we'd link her here. So these are now connected. But you can imagine that Dave can only have one account. He can't have more than one account. And this account cannot have more than one person have access to it. It's only Dave's account. So this is a one-to-one relationship, okay? It's a fairly, and not that common, but it is something that is used sometimes, okay? Right, so let's talk about one-to-many, and this one was a one-to-many over here. It's quite an obvious one. So the class of information technology can have many different lessons. Like it can have database and file concepts, but it could also have hardware. But database and file concepts can only belong to information technology, and hardware can only belong to information technology. Now, you might think, hey, wait a minute, earlier on in the first video, you also gave hardware for computer science. So couldn't we have something like this? So, you know, is this not the wrong kind of connection then? Could we have, how could I connect this hardware to computer science as well? Wouldn't this be a many-to-many relationship? But In this case, no, because hardware computer science and hardware information technology aren't actually the same lessons. They might cover similar topics, but they're significantly different that you couldn't teach the one class to the other. So these are actually different things. So this might be computer sciences lesson. So you would link it here because there's computer sciences ID. Okay, so it is still a one-to-many relationship. So one subject, like information technology, can have many lessons, but this lesson can only have one subject that it belongs to. And they've indicated that here in this diagram. Here's the side where there's only one, and this side's got many connections. So that just shows, and the way they've showed how this connection is done is they got the PK, which represents the primary key. The primary key has to be unique, as I've spoken before. It has to be unique. And then it's linked to the other table, and over here there's a class ID, which we've put over there, and this is the foreign key, and this is the key that connects these two tables. Alright, so it's one-to-one and one-to-many. So now how are we going to do a many-to-many? A many-to-many is a bit more complicated. I'm going to just get rid of this. We know about this now. And I'm also just going to get rid of this because I want to carry on with this diagram over here. So let's extend it. So if we had students, we want a many-to-many connection. The only way we can do that in a database is to have a middle table that makes those connections. And you often just call the middle table, the name is just the concatenation of the two tables that it joins. So for example, let's say I'm going to make another table called students in a bit. So let's just make this student, I'm going to call it student underscore lesson table. Alright, and let's have a look at what it has there. So it also has a unique primary key, and this is just called student lesson ID. Alright, and I'm just going to call it 1. And then the foreign key to link, or let's start with the lessons because we haven't created the student table yet. So let's just do the lesson ID. Alright, so the student doesn't exist yet. Oh, well, okay, sorry. And then we're going to do student ID. Okay, so now that we've got these few pieces in place, let's just make the student table so that this makes sense. And okay, we're going to need a student ID. Oh, what else do they want? Forename and surname. We're just going to do, I'm just going to do forename and surname. We don't have to worry about the other information right now. Alright. Okay, so we must make these into tables. Oh my word. I need to do it again. Okay. Whoopsie. I had the wrong thing selected there. Okay. So, okay, so this is how we can, connect these tables. This middle table here is how we're going to do it. So, okay, let's just create our new students. All right, and Dave is taking database. He's taking this class, database and file concepts. So we got to firstly find the lesson ID, which is 1, and then the student ID, which is also 1. And so this student table is now connected to this lesson table. Okay, but now how do we do one-to-many? So database and file concepts, let's say we've got another student. Come on, why is it not expanding my table? Oh, there we go. Okay, and so let's just add a new record in here. And she's also taking database and file concepts. Okay, but she's taking computer science, which Dave is not doing. So she also needs to take the hardware, which is lesson 93. So you see now, Sue can be connected to many lessons, and many lessons can be connected to many students. And the way we do that is we have to have this middle table that basically just keeps track of all these connections. And we use the foreign keys and the primary keys to be able to make all those connections, to track those connections. Now, if you had to write this down and try and do just this little bit of information in a flat table like we had done before, we would have already had a ton of duplicated information in that table, which we have avoided by doing this, and we've made it much easier and cleaner to read. Okay, so that's just an overview of how we design databases and why we do and how we make those connections. So one-to-one connection, one-to-many connection, and many-to-manys. Many-to-many is actually a theoretical connection, and it can only be achieved by having a middle table with a many-to-one and a one-to-many connection in between. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.